The dead princess opened her eyes the moment Jace pressed the barrel of his pulse pistol against her temple. He should have pulled the trigger. 10 years of war, 3 months in a virulent torture cell, and the screaming ghosts of his entire unit demanded it. But those chrome eyes, liquid silver swimming with pain, held him frozen in a paralysis more absolute than any neurotoxin. "Please," she whispered, and the word cracked something in him he thought had died on Cygnus X-1. Commander Jace Theron was supposed to be salvaging ship cores in the Yasso's graveyard, not standing on the bridge of a derelict Verulan scout ship staring at royalty. Princess Kira, the celestial bloom herself, was supposedly executed 2 years ago. Yet here she was, naked and bleeding, fused to her ship's command throne by thick biocables that burrowed into her flesh like parasitic roots. Her skin glowed with an eerie golden luminescence where the nanobiotics pulsed through her veins. Forbidden tech, the kind both sides had sworn to abandon, the kind that had turned the last year of the war into a nightmare of screaming metal and melting flesh. "They put a map in my blood," Kira said, her words slurring, "a key to stop the next war." Jace laughed, harsh and bitter. "You're not a key, you're a weapon." Before he could decide whether to shoot her or ransom her, the ship answered for him. A deep hum vibrated through the deck as dormant engines roared to life. The bridge iris sealed with a wet squelch. On the scanner, a hunter ship dropped from warp, weapons hot. "The ship thinks we're under attack," Kira gasped as energy cables flared. "It's jumping." The universe tore itself apart. The biological warp drive didn't fold space, it violated it. Jace felt his atoms unstring and rethread as the ship plunged through dimensions it wasn't meant to touch. When reality reassembled, they were in warp space, and Kira was no longer dying. She sat up, her wounds knitting closed with unnatural speed. The broken princess vanished, replaced by something sharp and dangerous. "That was invigorating," she purred. "Apologies if it damaged your fragile human physiology." Jace stalked toward her, fury overriding pain. "Where are you taking us?" "I'm not taking us anywhere. The ship is following emergency protocols." She tested her magnetic binders with a casual flex. "You're merely baggage." Her gaze drifted down his body. "Tell me, is all human military hardware as rigid and unresponsive?" He drew his knife, forged from the shattered cockpit glass of his last command, and pressed it beneath her chin. "I've endured things you can't imagine, Princess. Don't lecture me on strength." She leaned into the blade, something unreadable flickering in her eyes. "And yet here you are, holding glass against the only hope for your survival. How very human." She tilted her head. "Will you kill me and doom yourself? Or will you listen?" The knife trembled in his hand. She was right. He was trapped. "Talk," he bit out. Her story was impossible. A ceremonial sacrifice to seal the peace, a failsafe embedded in her blood. Her father's final desperate gambit against the rising houses that wanted dominance, not peace. The nanobiotics in her veins carried a cipher, a living key to the core synapse, the central hub controlling every piece of Varian war technology in the galaxy. "I'm unstable," she admitted. "Without the proper components, this technology will either consume me or burn out. The ship is taking me to the only place that can help." That place was Port Noctis, a black market cesspool carved into a dead moon's canyon. Jace kept Kira bound and cloaked as they navigated the chaos of weapon stalls and gene-splicing clinics. While he haggled for the regulator she needed, she stole it. "Run," he said, grabbing her arm. They almost made it. Then a voice boomed across the market. 5 million credits for the runaway princess." The bounty hunter from the debris field stood on a sky bridge above them, plasma rifle aimed. Every smuggler and mercenary in the alley turned toward them with hungry eyes. Blaster fire erupted. They sprinted through chaos, Kira's stolen cloak tearing away when a bolt struck her shoulder. Her skin began to glow, the intricate patterns beneath pulsing like a beacon. Her golden blood seeped into the grimy stone. The crowd gasped. It was her. Jace dragged her onto their ship as the boarding ramp retracted, blaster fire pinging harmlessly off bio-woven hull. In the airlock, he knelt beside her trembling form and dressed her wound with hands that shouldn't have been gentle. "Thank you, Jace," she said softly. It was the first time she'd used his name. He didn't reply. Couldn't. The hatred was still there, but something else had grown alongside it. Something dangerous and unwelcome. The ship brought them to the Veil Nebula, where colossal war arcs from the old conflict drifted like dead gods. Kira worked the stolen regulator into her forearm, her unstable glow smoothing to a steady rhythm. "We need to reach the core synapse," she said. "Whoever controls the map can reactivate every dormant Virilan ship, or deactivate every weapon from a rifle to a dreadnought. They can end war before it begins. Or start one that makes the last look like a skirmish," Jace countered. She looked at him with those impossible chrome eyes. Yes. A planetary defense system caught them, confused by wild biotech in the atmosphere reacting with her blood. The crash was violent. They survived, barely, but the jungle world had other plans. As night fell, shimmering rain began, hallucinogenic spores that turned the air into liquid nightmare. Jace saw his fallen unit, accusing him. Kira saw her sister's guards coming to carve the map from her flesh. They attacked each other, prisoners of trauma and poison, knife and rock raised for mutual destruction. Then Jace looked into her terrified eyes and saw not a monster, but a mirror, another survivor drowning in the wreckage of war. His choked laugh turned into something hysterical. Kira joined him. They collapsed against each other, laughter dissolving into breathless relief. "We're a terrible pair," she said. In the vulnerable quiet that followed, he told her about the bioagent, the prison camp, the torture that made him relive his worst moments until reality dissolved. She told him about her sister's jealousy, her designed protocols for breaking enemies. Slowly, she let the cloak fall from her shoulders. She turned, showing him the long surgical scar below her ribs. "This is where they put it in." His fingers traced the scar, gentle despite the violence in his heart. Electric current passed between them. The space grew charged, heavy. He leaned in. She met him halfway. But she pulled back at the last second, sadness flooding her features. "You wouldn't survive me, Jace. My kiss could poison your kind." Raiders found them before dawn. They fought together, seamless, deadly, a perfect synchronization born from shared survival. When it was over and Kira finally slept, Jace watched the moonlight trace the map on her skin and knew with bone-deep certainty he wouldn't let anyone else have her. He woke to find her gone. On the rock where her head had rested, a message written in her own blood. "Follow only if you trust me." The words led him to Sanctuary K7, a fortress hidden in an asteroid. His crude disguise failed within minutes. Guards dragged him before Kira's sister, Lyra, a colder, sharper version of the woman he'd fought beside. Kira stood next to the throne, head bowed in submission, empty, broken. "This is the human pet?" Lyra circled him like a predator. "Unremarkable." "He was a tool," Kira said, monotone. She didn't look at him. Nothing more. Betrayal was a blade twisting in his gut. Everything, the laughter, the almost kiss, the shared wounds, had been manipulation. "Take him to the echo chamber," Lyra commanded. Kira, you will witness his processing, a lesson in severing sentimental attachments. In the soundproof black sphere of the echo chamber, guards left them alone. The moment the door sealed, Kira's demeanor shattered. "Quiet," she snapped, working his binders free. "The core synapse is here, behind security, requiring 2 genetic markers, virulin high blood and non-virulin. My sister's been trying to splice a hybrid for months." She looked at him intensely. "I didn't lead you into a trap. I brought you because I need you. You're my key." The truth hit him like a plasma bolt. "You could have told me." "And what would you have done?" She stepped closer in the absolute darkness. "Lyra had to believe I was broken. It was the only way." "So what now?" "Now I kill you." She rose on her toes, hands cupping his face. The kiss was fierce, possessive, and poisoned. Neurotoxin from the crate orchid flooded his system. His limbs went heavy, unresponsive. "It mimics death," she whispered against his lips, her voice cracking. "It's the only way to get you out. Please survive this." The world dissolved. Jace woke on a conveyor belt, carrying corpses toward a reclamation furnace. The neurotoxin was wearing off, just enough to roll himself off the belt before the flames consumed him. As he lay gasping, he heard voices. Lyra and her medical officer discussing Kira's neural extraction. The procedure would peel the map from her cerebral cortex. She wouldn't survive. Kira didn't know. She thought this was the plan. She was walking into her own execution. Something in Jace died in that moment. The last vestige of the soldier who hated all virulons, incinerated in the furnace's heat. All that remained was cold purpose. She was his to save. He moved through the station like a predator unleashed, killing guards with brutal efficiency. The broken hilt of his knife, his symbol of vengeance, shattered against an enhanced soldier's spine as he forced his way into the surgical chamber. Kira lay on the table, her skin peeled back, the golden neural map exposed and pulsing. Lyra stood nearby, watching with clinical detachment. Jace threw the broken hilt, striking the medical officer. The man dropped. Jace charged the control pedestal, tearing it from its moorings. The restraints holding Kira vanished. Guards moved to intercept. Jace fought with the savagery of a dying animal, weaponless and bleeding. A plasma bolt grazed his shoulder. He stumbled. Then Kira was there, free, feral, fighting for both their lives. In the chaos, Lyra fled. The chamber filled with the sound of alarms and harsh breathing. Kira slumped against the surgical table, golden blood leaking between her fingers. Jace stood over her, the broken hilt of his knife in his hand, the symbol of everything he'd lost. He could end her suffering, grant her mercy, justice for his fallen friends. "End me or enter me," she whispered, desperate. He let the knife fall. Kneeling before her, he cradled her face and kissed her. The world exploded. Their minds crashed together, memories, pain, fear, hope, merging into one incandescent consciousness. The map was no longer just code, it was part of them both. Together they reached out to the core synapse and sent a single command: sleep. Across a dozen star systems, virulon weapons went dark. Fleets drifted, soldiers' armor faded to nothing. Centuries of war programming simply switched off. The feedback was catastrophic. Kira screamed, convulsing. Her eyes rolled back. Jace lifted her unconscious form and ran through the self-destructing station, dodging civil war and collapsing architecture. A sky bridge shattered beneath his feet. He leapt the final gap, landing hard in the docking bay. They escaped in his shuttle as the station tore itself apart. On the neutral world of Praxis, they stood trial in the Crucible, a place where memory itself was evidence. Kira offered her testimony first, laying bare her pain. The surgery, her father's desperation, her sister's betrayal. Then Jace was forced to testify. The arena experienced his torture, his units' deaths, the horror of Virillan warfare. But he gave them more. He showed them the cave on the jungle planet. Her whispered confession, her pulled-back kiss, her desperate plea for him to survive. "Her people did this to me," he said, voice cracking with emotion. "But this woman is not her people. She paid the price for their peace. She has the right to live free of the war that made us both." The crucible declared a binding truce. It wasn't total victory, but it was a beginning. That evening, they stood on a balcony overlooking Praxis's carved city. "So what now?" Jace asked. "There is no we," Kira said softly. "My people need someone to guide them away from what they became. I owe them that." The hope in his chest turned to ash. "I understand." The next morning, he prepared to leave. He was in his cockpit running pre-flight when footsteps echoed on the ramp. Kira appeared, dressed in practical flight gear. In her hand was her royal guard helmet. She looked at it, then tossed it aside with a clatter. "My people will find their way," she said, closing the distance between them. "They don't need a princess. They need an example of what it means to be free." She looked up at him, eyes shining. "The war is over. My purpose as a weapon is over." She took his hand. "Let's fly." Together, they turned to the controls. The ship lifted above stark mountains, climbing toward stars. They were no longer commander and princess, weapon and victim, enemy and enemy. Just two survivors, finally writing a map of their own.